Harold Jacobs, 35 years old, a security officer, had always considered his life to be ordinary. He was stable, responsible, and like most people, his life revolved around family and work. His marriage to Sandra seemed perfect. They had built a life together with their daughter, Rebecca, whom they both loved. Everything was going as it should. But one day, while checking some documents in his study, Harold accidentally stumbled upon some letters hidden in a box that Sandra had left on the desk. At first, he didn't think much of it, but when he opened one of the letters, he realized something was wrong. The letter wasn't addressed to him, but to Adam, his brother. He opened it without thinking much, but after reading a few lines, everything changed. Sandra was writing to Adam about how much she missed him, how their meetings were always filled with passion, and how they couldn't wait to be together again. It was more than just a note. It was an open declaration of a secret relationship. At first, Harold couldn't believe what he was reading. He kept going through the other letters, which were all addressed to Adam, each one more passionate and explicit than the last. It wasn't a casual affair. It was something deep, something real. Sandra wasn't just cheating on him. She was in love with his brother. Harold felt the ground beneath him give way, and the pain was overwhelming. It was as if his entire world was falling apart. But that wasn't all. As he continued sifting through the papers, he found something else. Something that made his stomach drop even further. It was a DNA test result. At first, he didn't understand what it meant, but then he saw Rebecca's name at the top. When he read through the results, his heart sank. Rebecca wasn't his biological child. She was Adam's. The shock hit him like a wave. His world, already shaken by the revelation of the affair, was now completely shattered. The woman he loved and trusted had not only been cheating on him with his brother, but she had also given him a child that wasn't even his. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his family, was a lie. Harold, in utter disbelief, knew he had to take action. He couldn't just confront Sandra and expect to move on from this. No, this was too much. It called for something drastic. He couldn't just let this go unpunished. He hired Marcus, a private investigator, to gather more evidence. Harold wasn't content with just knowing about the affair through letters. He needed hard proof, something undeniable. Over the next few weeks, Marcus set up surveillance on Sandra and Adam, carefully documenting their every move. Harold wasn't just looking for confirmation. He wanted everything. Texts, photos, videos, whatever it took to expose them completely. The more evidence they gathered, the more Harold's anger grew. The texts between Sandra and Adam were full of explicit messages, references to their secret meetings, their hidden love. Photos showed them together in places Harold had never thought to question. There were even videos showing them in his own bed, the ultimate betrayal. When Rebecca's birthday came, Harold knew it was time. He had planned everything down to the last detail. Sandra and Adam would be at the party, and he was going to make sure they couldn't deny anything anymore. In the hotel where the party was held, Harold took the stage, his heart racing but his mind clear. He used a projector to display everything, the love letters, the text messages, the videos, everything that proved the affair. The entire room went silent as the projector flickered, showing the explicit texts, the intimate moments between Sandra and Adam, all of it exposed for everyone to see. The crowd watched in shock, some in disbelief, others in utter discomfort. Sandra's face turned white as she recognized the images, and Adam looked nervously around, realizing there was no way out. Harold didn't speak a word. He didn't need to. The evidence said everything. It was done. The betrayal was out in the open, and Harold had reclaimed his dignity. After Harold exposed Sandra and Adam's affair in front of everyone, he wasted no time in delivering the divorce papers. The room fell silent, all eyes on Sandra as she processed the betrayal. It wasn't just a simple announcement of their breakup. It was a public execution of everything they had built together. He didn't need to argue with her. The evidence was all over the projector, in plain sight for anyone to see. He wasn't about to waste his energy discussing it. Sandra was still reeling, speechless. She had always been so careful, so meticulous about hiding her tracks, but now everything was out in the open. Harold didn't wait for her to speak. He wasn't interested in hearing excuses or apologies. The letters, the texts, the video, all of it. It didn't matter what Sandra had to say now. He had no intention of letting her wiggle out of this. The betrayal went deeper than the affair itself. It was everything she had built with him that turned out to be a lie. Adam's reaction was entirely different. Instead of admitting guilt, he tried to argue. The guilt was visible in his eyes, but he still couldn't help himself from justifying his actions. How would you feel if your partner hid their affair for months or even years? Write in the comments. It didn't mean anything, he tried to explain. It was a mistake, Harold, you've got to understand. Harold just stared at him. The man he had trusted for years, the brother he had fought alongside, had done the unthinkable. Adam didn't deserve any more of Harold's attention. No, Adam, Harold said, his voice cool and detached. You're not my brother anymore. You don't get to explain this away. Adam's face turned red with anger and shame, but Harold wasn't listening anymore. It wasn't about family anymore. It was about principle. Adam had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The years of brotherhood, the shared experiences, the moments that made them family, all evaporated in an instant. The betrayal went deeper than anything Harold could have imagined. Sandra tried to salvage something, anything. Harold, please, she said, her voice trembling. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. We were. Harold cut her off. No. Don't try to explain. You chose this path. You wanted to play games, and now you'll face the consequences. He wasn't interested in hearing anything more from her. All of their years together had led to this point, and Harold wasn't going to let it slide. The years of lies, the manipulation, the infidelity, it all had to be accounted for. He had already made up his mind. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the years of dishonesty and betrayal that had now come to light. Sandra had tried to gaslight him for so long, tried to make him believe that everything was fine, that their life together was normal. But now, he had nothing left to hold on to. Without giving Sandra a chance to respond, Harold moved on. He wasn't going to dwell on her anymore. He wasn't going to waste his time arguing or explaining. This was his life now, and he was taking control of it. As a final act of resolution, Harold decided that Adam wouldn't walk away unscathed. He had the resources, the connections, and the power to destroy Adam's career. He would make sure his brother faced the consequences of what he had done, not just personally, but professionally. Adam had to understand that there was no escaping the reality of what he had done. Harold worked fast. Using his position at work, he began spreading the word about Adam's actions. He made sure that the people who mattered, his superiors, his colleagues, knew exactly what kind of person Adam was. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about ensuring that Adam would face the consequences of his actions. Harold didn't want to leave him a way out. Adam had done far too much damage for Harold to let him escape without repercussions. The man had not just betrayed him personally, he had jeopardized everything they had built together. Harold wasn't going to let that slide. Adam needed to feel the weight of his decisions. With the divorce papers served, the humiliation of the affair in the open, and Adam's reputation on the line, Harold moved on with the next phase of his plan, moving out of the house. Sandra could keep everything they had built, but Harold was done. He couldn't bear to stay in a place where everything felt like a lie. The house they shared, the memories they built together, All of it felt like a weight he couldn't carry anymore. As he packed his things, he took another step in his quiet revenge. Harold had always been methodical, always thinking one step ahead. He installed hacking devices on Sandra's and Rebecca's phones. It wasn't about just punishing them. It was about making sure he had the truth, the absolute truth, at his fingertips. He wasn't going to let them get away with anything else. Every text, every call, every conversation would be monitored, tracked. Harold wasn't going to leave anything to chance. He needed to know everything. Sandra had already hurt him more than he thought was possible, but Rebecca, the daughter he had raised, the girl he had given everything to, she was the one who hurt him the most. He wasn't going to take any more chances. The devices were installed, and now he had all the information he needed to keep tabs on them. Every betrayal, every hidden moment, he would be there to see it. But Harold wasn't doing this for revenge alone. It wasn't just about making them pay. It was about taking control of his own life. He had let them both walk all over him for too long. Sandra's lies, Adam's betrayal, all of it, he had let it build up, and now it was time for him to take his life back. He wasn't going to wait for Sandra or Adam to make the next move. Harold was taking the reins. He was moving on. He didn't need them anymore. With the devices in place and everything set, Harold could finally breathe again. He didn't need Sandra or Adam to feel whole. He wasn't going to let their lies destroy him. He was done being the victim in their twisted game. It was his turn now, and he wasn't going to let anything hold him back. As he moved out of the house, with all his things packed and the divorce finalizing, Harold began to think about what was next. This chapter was over. The life he had known, the life he had worked so hard to build with Sandra, was gone. But that was okay. It wasn't the end, it was the beginning. He had already taken the first step, and the road ahead was his to choose. It was time to leave it all behind. Time to step into the future. As the months passed, Harold found himself steadily rebuilding his life. After the divorce, he had more time to think about what he truly wanted, and the answer was clear. He wanted peace. He wanted a life that wasn't defined by lies, deceit, and betrayal. He had already taken the first step by cutting ties with Sandra and Adam, and he wasn't looking back. One day, while going through some old photos, he came across Rose, someone he had known years ago, a friend from a particularly tough time in his life. They had shared a few moments back then, and he had always appreciated how she had been there for him. But as things went on, they lost touch. Life happened. He moved forward, and she did too. But now, with everything that had happened, Harold reached out to her. It was simple, just a text, but it felt different. It was like reaching out for something real. They began to talk more, reconnecting over shared memories, laughs, and life stories. Rose had her own history, her own experiences, and Harold found himself drawn to her warmth, her genuine nature, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Soon, their relationship began to grow. It wasn't rushed. There were no grand gestures or forced moments. Harold didn't need that. He wasn't looking for perfection. He was looking for something real, and that was what he found with Rose. As they spent more time together, Harold began to realize that this was what he had been searching for all along. Someone who valued him for who he was, without expectations, without the pressure to meet some fabricated ideal. Rose made him feel seen, understood, and cared for in a way he hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, Sandra and Adam's worlds continued to crumble. Harold didn't need to keep tabs on them anymore, but he knew enough. He didn't care about their consequences. They were just a part of his past now. His focus was entirely on the future, and the future looked different with Rose by his side. Months later, after the divorce was finalized, Harold and Rose took the next step in their relationship. They got engaged. The engagement wasn't anything over the top. It wasn't a grand spectacle. It was simple and intimate, just like everything about their relationship. Harold had finally found the peace he had been looking for. It felt natural, easy, and, most importantly, it felt like the right decision. Soon, they were planning their wedding, a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family. There was no need for a lavish celebration. They both knew what mattered: love, respect, and the future they were going to build together. Harold's life was finally on track. After everything he had been through, years of lies, betrayal, and pain, he had found someone who genuinely cared for him. He wasn't living in the past anymore. He wasn't defined by Sandra's betrayal or Adam's treachery. He was creating something new, something real. As they exchanged vows in front of their closest loved ones, Harold knew that he had finally found what he deserved: love, honesty, and a family built on trust. Everything else, the betrayal, the hurt, the anger, was behind him. With Rose by his side, he was ready to face the future, ready to start the life he had always deserved. The journey had been long, but Harold had made it to the other side. And now, with Rose and their future ahead of them, he was ready for whatever came next.